Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Traffic and Trade Group, and this is your end of day as well as end of week market recap. Today is Friday, June 7th. What a day. I think this week had something for everybody. You'll see what I mean or what I'm referring to when I bring up the week's performance. But yeah, looking at all these red these red cells over here. I mean, there was some outsized moves today. And it just kind of reminds me when we see this types of price action in certain things, and looking at what the indices did was just basically you look at the Qs, which is flat for the day, SPY basically flat for the day, but it's really not capturing what's going on under the surface. And you could kind of look at what the small caps are doing for a little bit of a hint there. But there's a lot of moving parts that are going on underneath the hood. So before we get into any of that, risk disclaimer in front of you: everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. This video is for information purposes only. Also, what I try to do in these videos for you is trying to just give you an objective view. Now, I have positions on and I'm trying to make money, of course, like everybody else in this market. But what I try to do is just kind of give an overall view and say, one of the analogies that I was going through earlier in the week was kind of like a red light, green light type thing. So I'm going to continue to do that for some things, but I think that what I'll try to do is just again give you a sense of like whether you should be a little bit more cautious here, whether you could be a little bit more aggressive here, and basically some levels to basically take a look at. Okay, so let's what I wanted to start with was, the day's economics. And also, I'm also going to give you, some things to kind of watch for next week, which I think are going to be interesting. But yeah, I mean, if you go back to what I was referring to in yesterday's video, I talked about I went through a little bit of a scenario analysis. And, I thought the number here was too low in terms of the survey. And sure enough, we got a higher report, right? Now, the other thing that I was thinking was, so I got that right, in terms of I thought that this number would be higher. And again, I'm not crunching these jobs numbers. I'm not an economist who's going out and taking surveys or putting together a whole bunch of stats for this. I'm basically just cuffing it. And then what I thought was really interesting here, and again, you just don't hear about this too much in terms of like what the financial media reports, but the average hourly earnings ticked up by a tenth of a percentage point versus expectation. So this is not good for inflation, guys. Inflation is still running hot now. Like for whatever reason, like the financial media will report the unemployment rate, and these things don't matter as much as what really it comes down to, because of the Fed's implications of what they're going to be doing or what they're not going to be doing, is based on what's inflation. And so to see that these numbers are ticking up again is probably not the best thing. And there was a lot of knee-jerk reactions. And um, another thing that I just wanted to mention too, I'm going to try to like go around a couple different things in here. But the other thing is, remember going back to the ADP number, right? I always say, ignore this ADP number, right? Even though people pay attention to it, I don't really understand why, because it's a lot of times it's way off from what the Friday number is. So just keep that in mind next month. I tell people every time I see it that to be careful with what you're seeing with the ADP employment number, and so on and so forth. So next week, right? We've got a couple big events for next week, or data points, right? You're going to get the CPI that's going to come out the same day as the Fed decision. So they're not expecting any rate movement next week, but it's really going to be about the guidance. And the pattern has been is that the individual Fed speakers have been a little bit more hawkish, so kind of like a bad cop. And then Powell comes on and he's kind of good cop. So I don't know if he's going to have that tone again, like more of a little bit of a dovish tone. But I think we just keep pushing out the expectations of a rate cut. So again, if you look in this line for the June 12th meeting, nothing, right, in terms of what the market is expecting. The market is not really expecting anything for the July meeting either. When we get to September, and again, this is just what the market is pricing in. It's not really um, this changes based on what the market expectations are. But for September, there's about a 44% chance, call it 50% chance that the market is thinking that there's going to be a interest rate cut. Interesting that when you get past the the election time, this number dips back down again. But regardless, it just kind of keeps getting pushed out. Now think about this. The Qs didn't close on the highs today, but they made a new 52-week high. You may, and I know that other people are saying this too, but I don't really understand why you need an interest rate cut at this point, considering that the market is doing quite fine, right? And the data is coming out. Just to also kind of go back to what we saw this week, we had the ISM manufacturing that came out in the beginning of the week, right? That was a little bit light. And we also had the ISM services data that came out much higher than expected. So again, we're getting some mixed economic reports, but overall, they don't seem all that bad, right? So let's move on from the economics, but I spend a little bit more time because this was a macro tape. When you look at what happened to gold today, and when you look at what happened to silver today, right? And so pretty extreme moves, especially when we'll go and we'll start looking at a couple charts here. But I'll start with the gold because I think that this is very interesting, right? And if you look at gold futures, right, here's the daily chart. Right. And that's a big move. That's a big rejection at the top of this month's value area. I don't know if a rejection gets much worse than that, but I'm sure it probably does. There's probably another situation, but getting right to the top of the value and getting smoked there. So, a lot of a lot of bullish option activity in the metal space too. But hey, as I always say, option flow is not always right. And it's about 50% right, 50% wrong. And that's from what I noticed, right? I'm not trying to sell anybody on option flow. It just is what it is for as long as I've been doing this. Because you know why? Well, people tweet out when it works. When option flow doesn't work, crickets. Nobody mentions the thing, and it's a big game for some of these fellows. So silver was down huge as well today, and that's a rejection. Kind of a double top look there, and still inside the value area for the month, but really interesting. Right? And then a lot of eyes on the Bitcoin chart too, which will bring up Bitcoin futures. It was strong today, but look at it kind of come back in, and it's just kind of what I'm seeing in this market where there's a lot of things that kind of look like it's a good looking chart. And then all of a sudden it gets slapped, and reverses to the downside. So to me, when you're seeing a lot of things that are kind of, and it's not everything, right? There are a lot of good stories out there too, and names that are making new highs, but there's also just a lot of rejections about, where something smoothly starts to go higher and then hit and of course that happens a lot when you've got economic reports that come out a bit different than expectations, like we had the jobs report. So that's the main thing. Also there was one other thing that I wanted to just make sure, and you'll hear me talk about this next week too, but this is a little bit concerning, is that they're only looking for 0.1% for CPI. That is a very difficult hurdle to get over in terms of am I saying that right? Hurdle to get over in terms of like the number needs to come in 0.1. If you start to see like this number comes in 0.3 or 0.4, market's probably not going to like it too much. All right. But again, that's on Wednesday. And you'll also get small business optimism, which I think will be interesting too. We're also going to have some bond auctions next week too, right? We didn't have any this week, even though bonds made a big move. That was something else that made a big move. But you're going to get the 3-year, the 10-year. So all this big issuance again next week in terms of bond auctions. So it's going to be a very interesting week. Here's what happened in bonds. This again, here's where like having a little bit of an edge in terms of our indicator, I think really kind of comes into play, because look at what happened there, right? That's a full out rejection. So gold rejected. Look at bonds completely rejected, right? At the bottom. So that gray box, and I'm going to bring up the weekly chart, but I just wanted to give you the difference. But look at that rejection that happened, right? Trying to get back into the value area for the year. That's a complete not so fast, like big rejection in terms of trying to turn the corner there. So overall, like not a big move for bonds, but it just kind of takes back for the week, right? But it gives back a huge chunk of those gains for the week. So big move there. And here's what TLT looks like too, right? Because ZB is 30-year bond futures. This also got rejected, right? Like right where you want to see things turn the corner, there's a rejection right at the bottom of the value, or it wasn't able to get there. And then the last thing that I'm going to show here is dollar futures, which I think I can bring on here, but I guess I can't. Maybe Forex. I'll just do the UUP ETF, but the dollar had also a pretty big move today. Here's the weekly candle. Like I would have to say, this looks like it's something that I would buy, right? A chart like this on the weekly, digestion, and then starting to turn the corner higher. And here's what it looks like on the daily chart too. So we're not above where we were in April, but it's starting to move in that direction. And again, it'll be dependent perhaps on what kind of economics that we're going to get next week. All right. So that's your macro review. Again, I don't normally like to spend that much time on a macro review, but it is what it is. There's a lot of moves based on that. And that's why I pay attention to, to what macro is doing. And then of course, what single stocks are doing and what group those single stocks are in. So, right. That's a lot of bad news that I've kind of mentioned. The good news is for the S&P, is that little retest back into the top of the value area held quite nicely, right? And we're still above this 53.48 level. If you're receiving my notes in I put out an index update in the morning, right, to give you these levels to watch. So even if you don't have the value areas of the MarketWebs on your screen, you've got my levels to pay attention to. The Qs, still have some room, even though that's not the best looking candle, right? Even though like some candles will look really bad looking, if they don't lose the trend, it's not that big of a deal. So I would be watching this 459.70. And I think that's not the end of the world if we come in and test, and it would actually maybe shake out a little bit bullish sentiment. If price kind of comes back in here, tests and holds and then goes back out to the right. That's one way that you could trade with the value areas. I get that question frequently, right? So here's one way: breakout, right? Break above the value area. That's the signal, right? But breakout, retest, and you go long at that retest, right? As long as it holds this 459.70. If it doesn't hold that, then you reassess and maybe get out of your trade. All right. So that's that. And then of course, okay, so that was some good. Here's the bad, right? IWM breaking below. And it's really interesting when you pair these up. I've been talking about this chart for the last couple days, but take a look at the Qs versus IWM, a monster bar for the week, because when you look at the performance for the week, the Qs were up 2.7% this week, and IWM the other way down 2.2%. That is a major that's another divergence. And the divergence can also be seen, even though I'm just going to be looking at the S&P highs here versus lows, right? And this is not updated for today, but you could see that there's an awful lot of new lows here, right? It's like been a tug of war in terms of new highs versus new lows. This is not showing strength in the overall market. It's showing a lot of indecision, right? And then if you go back and if you look at this for today, right, there was okay, so 500 names in the S&P, the 8% made a new high today. 40 names made a new high today. but there's even more new lows. So again, we've been seeing this. Like yesterday was the other way. There was a bit more new highs in the S&P yesterday, but 2 days ago it was more new lows. So it's very interesting to see what's going on under the hood and the separation in names, more names making new lows than new highs. So that tells me to be a little bit more cautious, especially when we've got a big week in front of us. Let me go back to the performance for the week because again, look at the difference between some of these areas. Crypto stocks did very well this week, even though Bitcoin stalled. The crypto ETF was up 5%. Semiconductors, that was basically one day because the performance was on Wednesday up 4.9%. So that covered the whole week's gains. Tech was strong, biotech strong. Healthcare did very well. And, I've been talking about the medical devices. It was looking for um, being objective and looking for areas that might perk up, and one of them was medical devices this week. So I like that. It will have to get through some resistance, but here's the ETF, right? Not a great look, still needs to get through this 56.62, right? That's the top of this year's value area. And on the daily chart, it needs to break through that 57 VPOC. So it definitely has some work to do. But things like Boston Scientific is out to new highs, and that's the name in the TTG trend portfolio. ISRG also at new highs, right? So there are some things, or I don't know if that's a closing high, but that's a closing weekly high for ISRG, right? So there's some positive developments there, and that'll be a group for me, I know, to watch next week. On the flip side, a lot of commodities, a lot of metals, energy really got hit hard this week. OIH down 6.2%, XME down 6% for the week, and the gold miners, which were down a huge percent today, they were down 6.9% today, right? So they actually had some gains coming into today. Steel ETF also down 4.9%. Home builders down 4%. Those home builders was very interesting. They did not rally earlier in the week when yields were going lower. And as I've been going over, there's a lot of concerning areas in this market right now. Right, it is certainly with the S&P and the Qs very close to new highs. That's a nice looking bar for the day. Maybe it holds on to these April lows. That'll be something to watch for the home builder ETF. And if not, I was also talking about the industrials yesterday. They're hanging on for now. They didn't make it back into the value area for the month, but they're trying to hang on. I don't like this 50-day moving average that's kind of starting to slope down the other way. But if it can get back above the 50-day moving average, it won't, the data will kind of change a little bit. All right, so that's a couple things. Apple has their event on Monday. Again, one of the principles, as we witnessed with this GameStop saga, buy the rumor, sell the news. The stock goes up into this YouTube event, and once the YouTube event starts, the stock sells off. Now it was already selling off, from the uh, announcement of earnings and a secondary, but it continued to sell off more. Would I be buying Apple here? No, I think it's risen unbelievably into this developers conference. But I will still be paying attention. If they announce something really cool and interesting that's going to drive profits, then it can break out here. But if it doesn't announce anything groundbreaking, then it will probably be the usual buy the rumor, sell the news. That is one of the most important things that I believe it or not, it is one of the most like important relationships to know about, I think, is the buy the rumor, sell the news, because it happens over and over and over, and it's really good. Sometimes it happens that way with earnings, right? Stocks sometimes, for a widely anticipated earnings report, right? A lot of times, not 100% of the time, but a lot of times, a name will basically rally into the report and then may not do anything if it really rallies hard into the report once the actual numbers come out. All right, so any other observations? I think that's kind of it for the week. In terms of this performance, again, The S&P was up 1.3% for the week. But not a easy market to trade. I'll say that. And I finished up for the week, so that's a victory, right? To be up this week. But I'll tell you, it was not easy trading, and I had to take some stops in some trades, right? It's one of those things that you really have to get over as a trader, right? Especially in a market where we've got some names going up and some names going down, right? You don't want to have the names that are going down in your portfolio. And I know this doesn't happen to anybody on Twitter, right? But in real life, you're going to have names that go down, and how you manage those names that are going down is very important, right? And if you're going to be a profitable trader, if this market continues to kind of chop around, maybe slightly ascends higher, right, you're still going to have to cut those losers and let the winners ride a bit, right? So that's the name of the game. So, happy to have a positive week. It wasn't a stellar week for me, but I'm happy to get the first week of June positive, and we'll go from there, guys. Guys, have a great weekend. One other thing too, if you want to be a member of Tribeca Trade Group or check out our trading room, watch our analysis as we go through it in real time, as well as my real trade updates and watch list, which I think did fairly well this week. If I just bring this up really quickly. We had a handful of names, and I participated in NVIDIA. Um, I did not the best one was ARM on here. I didn't want to double up with the exposure. I played some other semiconductors, but such as Qualcomm. But Meta had a good week. Costco had a great week. Talk about a market leader right there. CAMT finished strong. This name was upgraded, I believe, today, or if not, it was a price price update. But and Intuitive Surgical, which we already talked about, the medical devices. So, a good handful of names that performed well for the week. So yes, if you want access to this, you can go to tribecatradegroup.com and use coupon code TTG new. And you get 50% off your first month. Also, getting a lot of questions about the MarketWebs and TradingView, right? We do offer a subscription to that, and you get the first 30 days free. So what I would suggest, like if you're interested in the indicator and the process that we go through, is sign up for a month of Tribeca Trade Group because it's half off. It's nothing, right? It's like $70 for the first month if you use the coupon code, and then you get the market webs for free for a month, so that you could check it out. You could also ask questions as you're going through in the room. Like we give on hands training. I answer questions from traders all day long, all week long, and we go through charts together so that you can kind of get a feel for using this type of a system. But you could do that, and it's going to be a very cheap 1 month for you to get a lot of information to try to learn and get a really good system down. And then at the end of the month, you can make a decision about it. All right, guys, that's it. Have a great weekend, and yeah, I'll see you on Monday.